for signature. Secondly, the president also took his time in signing the bill, which should not have happened. We need to now make up for the time that has been lost.
Noting that the negotiated deal on the IEBC was reached after the opposition staged countrywide demonstrations for almost a month, piling pressure on the Jubilee administration to intervene on their demands to have new IEBC commissioners in office, Odinga indicated that going back to the streets still remains a viable option for them.
The longer they delay, the more disillusioned people are going to become. And this may lead to a very unfortunate situation, which, of course, God forbid, we don't want to contemplate. But if they think that they can get away with it, that way, I'm sorry. Let them know that it will not be tolerated. So we have not talked about seeing demonstrations, but I don't think that is out of the way. You know, it is an option that is there.
The CODCO principal asked the government to fast-track the process of deciding the send-off package for the 9 IEBC commissioners, insisting, as the opposition, they will not participate in the coming elections with the current IEBC commissioners.
Right now you are paying 9 commissioners, but the new law has only provided for 7 commissioners. Again, a waste. Okay? But these people should be terminated immediately, even if you are saying you are going to pay them, but at least they should be given letters of termination so that when the others come, they start afresh.
Archbishop of the Anglican Church, Jackson Ole Sapit, has also challenged Parliament to desist from blame games, stating that as religious leaders and stakeholders in the process of getting new commissioners, they have already done their part.
And what we have begun to hear is not so good news for this country. When the various arms began to blaming one another. I heard yesterday the Speaker of the National Assembly blaming Salaries and the Remuneration Commission as the one delaying the process, and those ones say, no, we are not the ones. And this blame game will not augur well for the process and for this nation to have a peaceful election.
Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, has blamed the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, together with Treasury, for stalling the process of removing the IEBC commissioners, hence delaying the recruitment of new IEBC office holders. According to Muturi, despite Parliament passing the electoral laws to set in motion the process of removing commissioners, SRC has gone silent on the matter. Yet it is the body required to facilitate the extension of the negotiated agreement for IEBC commissioners to exit. Chris Dairo, KTN News.
And the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has said it is not to blame for the said delays, and a meeting has been scheduled to find a way forward. Now, suggested by a section of CORD leaders to turn the coalition into a political party has sparked a storm in the opposition, particularly over the joint nomination of candidates for elective slots. Tonight on Spotlight 2017, Moremi Mwangi interrogates the legal framework under which CORD can be registered as a political party and the likely impact of such a move ahead of the 2017 polls.
As President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto continue warming up for 2017, the opposition counterparts also appear to be vigorously fixing possible loose ends, keen on unseating the Jubilee coalition in the 2017 general election. And the latest card on the opposition table is a suggestion to turn the coalition into a political party, an idea which has now sparked off a political storm in CORD.
The presidential candidate shall run as a CORD candidate. We have seen the folly of having people run in their respective parties.
We'll have one single candidate for senatorial seat, for governorship, for the women representative, and at constituency level we'll have one candidate for seats in the National Assembly.
There will be no individual candidate who will run in a constituency as a candidate of CORD. When you run in a constituency or a ward, you will have to be running on one constituent party of CORD or another.
Registrar of Political Parties Lucy Ndongo says Section 5 of the Political Parties Act accords CORD the right to be registered as a party. According to Ndongo, in such an arrangement, the combined members of the 3 CORD affiliate parties would be deemed to be an association of persons seeking to form a new political party. However, such a move is totally different from the recent Jubilee merger, which happened pursuant to Section 11 of the Political Parties Act, which requires parties to merge under a new party or dissolve into a pre-existing party. The 12 Jubilee affiliate parties chose to merge into Jubilee Party, which was formed through a change of name from the initial Jubilee Alliance Party, JAP.
This is an animal that must be handled with care. And I'm sure, I think one of the reasons why CORD wants to go in that direction, if they want to go in that direction, is to sort out cases like Kakamega, where we have Kalwale and Oparanya. Mombasa, where we have Joho and Omar Hassan.
But if it is clear that this is the winning ticket, let's not shy away from going that way. Because going the other way is just giving Jubilee a second term.
Ford Kenya will compete aggressively against ODM, against Wiper, and against any other new party. The respective candidates of the divergent parties mobilize their supporters to come into the polling station in the mornings.
In a statement to newsrooms on Tuesday, ODM leader Raila Odinga suggested that ODM, Wiper, and Ford Kenya would jointly field candidates for elective slots so that the ultimate nomination certificates of the winner read either ODM CORD, Wiper CORD, or Ford Kenya CORD. But Ndongo argues that will not be possible if CORD is registered as a party, since a candidate can only be nominated by one political party. Sources within the opposition coalition say the idea to form a common CORD party without collapsing the affiliate parties ODM, Wiper, and Ford Kenya is partly a strategy to attract small parties and key leaders opposed to the recent Jubilee merger. But Ford Kenya and Wiper are said to be apprehensive of being swallowed by ODM, which enjoys a greater numerical strength.
So we're even talking to my brother Gideon Moi and everybody else. Yeah.
Our community has everything to gain if Mudavadi and Wetangula are both in CORD.
This will be the biggest catch in terms of corporate membership if they turn CORD into a party with corporate membership. And that will give Mudavadi a safety valve, a fence with which to join them, because he can't just join them by dissolving his party. Whether he was going to be the presidential candidate or not, it will be much easier for Mudavadi to come in as a corporate member.
As political realignments take center stage ahead of the August 8th polls, the key headache for potential aspirants and the incumbents remains the credibility of the party nomination process, while political parties still face an enormous task, stemming possible fallouts after the party primaries. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News in Nairobi.
It will certainly be interesting to see how this plays out. Let's stay with politics, shall we? And former ODM Secretary General Ababu Namwamba says he is satisfied with his new Labour Party outfit and has no intention whatsoever to return to ODM. Ababu, who has since been appointed Labour Party leader, says his new outfit will field candidates for all elective posts in 2017. Ababu was on a tour of Webuye Open Air Market, where he announced that he and other Labour Party officials will embark on a massive grassroots Meet the People tour.
Sisi watu wa nyumba ya Mlembe kutoka hapa magharibi mwa Kenya, tunataka kufanya kazi pamoja ili kuinua hali ya maisha ya watu wetu. Na sisi kama viongozi lazima tufanye bidii kufanya kazi pamoja. Na tunakemea hali yoyote ambayo italeta sintofahamu kati ya wananchi, wala ambao wanafanya siasa za ukabila.
From politics, Africa's elephant population has suffered its largest drop in 25 years. The International Union for Conservation of Nature has said and has blamed the plummeting numbers on poaching.
Based on 275 estimates from across the continent, a report released today placed Africa's total elephant population at around 415,000, a decline of around 111,000 over the past decade. It is the first time in 25 years that the group's African Elephant Status Report has reported a continental decline in numbers, with the organization attributing the losses in large part to a sharp rise in poaching, which is mainly done for the animals' tusks that are sold in the flourishing global ivory trade. Habitat loss is also increasingly threatening the species, the group said. The report was released at the world's biggest conference on the international wildlife trade, taking place in the South African city of Johannesburg. Thousands of conservationists and government officials are seeking to develop international trade regulations aimed at protecting different endangered species.
Levels of exploitation of some animals and plant species are high, and the trade is capable of heavily depleting their populations and even bringing some species close to extinction.
A booming illegal wildlife trade has put huge pressure on an existing treaty signed by more than 180 countries, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, CITES. The plight of Africa's elephants targeted for their tusks will be one of the most debated topics at the meeting, which will consider several proposals on whether to tighten or ease controls on the trade in ivory. Ellen Wanjiro, KTN News.
Now, they are among the frontier pastoralist communities stacked between Kenya and Ethiopia. The Dasanach have for a long time remained secluded, their language and culture even baffling their neighbors on both sides of the border. They speak a Kushaitic tongue, but historians have linked them to the Pokot of northwestern Kenya. Mark Namasa toured the region on the Kenya-Ethiopia border and found them in the midst of marriage proposal festivities.
Northern Kenya is dry, windy and sandy, but cultures have thrived here. Further north of the eastern shores of Lake Turkana, we get wind of a small community called the Dasanach. Vehicles are rare here, and if one shows up, you do anything to get on board. Finally, these goats and tin-roofed manyatas inform us we have arrived in Ileret village, the bastion of the Dasanach in Samburu County. It is a season for marriage arrangements, and we bump into the Kerisas. One of their daughters, Laini Kerisa, has found a suitor. Kiswahili or English are rarely spoken here, and Mzee Julius Korbo comes to our aid.
Iko karama kubwa sana. Ng'ombe karibu 10 tunamaliza. Mbuzi kwanza ini 100 na kitu tunamaliza kwa dunia ile ambaye anakuja hapa.
Laini is ready to be booked for marriage, but first she has to join her age mates, also barely 14, in a customary dance. Ostrich feathers are placed on the heads of prospective brides before the dance. Jingles are attached to the bride's scarves, ready for the dance.
Ukununua shanga ya kichwa, alafu baadaye unanunua hii, baadaye hii saa unatengenezwa, ndio sasa mafasi ya msichana.
The Korbo insists proposals do not automatically mean marriages, but for an outsider, verifying such information is a challenge.
Inaweza kufika mwaka 14, 15 kuendelea mbele namna hiyo, ndio naweza kuolewa.
Dasanach boys of about 16 typically identify a girl and let their parents do the rest of the work.
Hiyo ng'ombe ni mingi sana, hata naweza kufika 40 au 30. Lakini si siku moja.
Bride price is often shared amongst the father-in-law's brothers.
Kama wadugu, wewe unakula mkono 5. Huyu ni 6, mimi bengine 7. Huyu msee bengine ni 5. Namna hiyo tu.
The Dashanach not only circumcise their boys, but girls are also thrown into the mix via female genital mutilation. It is illegal, but such isolated communities find it easy to elude the arm of the law. The Dashanach have long complained of being ignored by both the Kenyan and Ethiopian governments. In 1939, they attracted the wrath of the British Royal Air Force, who pounded their area after the Dashanach collaborated with the Inyangatom community in a raid against the Turkana at a time Ethiopia was under the reign of Emperor Haile Selassie. Today, the Dashanach boast of only one MCA representing Ileret Ward. Like any other community living in a hardship zone, the Dashanach children start adapting to tough nomadic lifestyles from a tender age. Despite being one of the smallest communities on the Kenyan-Ethiopian border, the Dashanach remain some of the few communities still maintaining their roots and culture, even in the 21st century. Mark Namaswa, KTN News, Ileret Village, Marsabit County.
Vintage culture. Speaking of vintage, it was a showcase for vintage motor vehicles. And for those who turned out to socialize as well, they were not disappointed. Our reporter Caroline B. attended that Concours d'Elegance of 2016 at the Ngong Race Course here in Nairobi and has the details of this year's vintage motor vehicle beauty pageant.
The gleaming motorcycles on display and the classic polished car showcase was a spectacular scene to behold. This year's 46th edition brought together a maximum entry of 70 cars and 40 motorcycles, all competing for the top prize and a title for Kenya's best-looking vintage machinery.
The local entrants have also really upped their game. We have seen new entrants, first-time competitors, and we've been very, very pleased with the turnout of the spectators. Everybody has come out.
I used to be an aircraft engineer. So that's why the cars turn out to be very good. You know, we have top quality in aviation, so we put the same standards on our cars. So that's why you find the car is so beautiful.
The classic parade is a worldwide phenomenon, partly inspired by car and motorcycle owners of past eras. And this has encouraged motoring enthusiasts and their families to attend the concours in big numbers to admire the machines and also to socialize.
Initially, I was here as a spectator, but this year I came in with my motorcycle, so it's my first entry. And the show was good, absolutely well organized, very, happy day out.
It's a great platform to display your talent and passion about your love, about your bikes or about your cars.
With entries from Kenya, Uganda and South Africa, the judgment process was a rigorous one. A slight error was enough to reduce the participants' points, and those with well-kept vehicles and bikes were left smiling all the way home as they emerged winners in their respective categories.
We've got 3 judging stations. The first one is really for external finish, but we look at all the metallic parts. The second station looks at the mechanical functions of the motorcycle, chains, brakes, wheels, bearings, basically the mechanical functionality of all the moving components.
I was supposed to bring my winning bike, which I did not bring, and which many people were getting bored with, so I brought this one. And I came first with this one. So you need to do the rules. You don't just come and make noise here. You need to make them work well and do it right.
After completion of the judgment process was a parade of all entries in front of the racecourse grandstands.
The Concours d'Elegance is one of the classiest motorsport showcase here in Kenya, and just judging at the kind of entries that have been put in for this year, competition has gone a notch higher. It is all about diverse motorbike and heavy machinery on display. Caroline B., KTN News.
I did miss this year's Concours d'Elegance, but from Caroline's story, I have seen 1956 Datsun 160J. Beautiful car. Many thanks for staying with us here on Checkpoint. We are taking a quick commercial break. When we return, we have our Checkpoint discussion. We are focusing, training our cameras on public universities and the appointment of vice chancellors and, in general, the ethnicization of public universities. You don't want to miss that conversation. Stay with us. Point discussion this Sunday night on our institutions of higher learning, just coming against the backdrop of what happened in the county of Uasin Gishu this past weekend, where there was an altercation between local leaders and the Education Secretary Fred Matiang'i over the appointment of a vice chancellor in an acting capacity. They were saying that Dr. Fred Matiang'i did not do the right thing by not appointing Professor Isaac Koskei and appointing Professor Laban Ayiro, saying that he did not come from that region. That elicited a lot of reactions, a lot of Kenyans talking, especially on social media, and we want to focus on that issue, just how ethnicized are public universities in this country and what goes into the process of appointing a vice chancellor in a public university. And joining me here on the show tonight are two professors, Professor Kitili Naitule, Commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC. We also have with us Professor Macharia Munene, lecturer at the United States International University here in Nairobi, who was also a lecturer at the University of Nairobi for a period of 10 years. Let me start with you, Professor Naitule. The moment a nation begins to regard the tribe of a nation, tribe of a person who runs a public institution of higher learning, we are getting into a lot of trouble, aren't we?
Yes, we are, because the universities, by their very nature, are supposed to be drivers of diversity. And when we talk about national cohesion and integration, the universities are supposed to lean in that direction. So once we reduce them into a tribe of evendoms, then we basically don't know where to start, actually. Frankly, it becomes a very sad state of affairs.
Prof. Macharia, how deeply rooted is this problem in our public universities?
Well, it is deep, and it is not new. What has happened is that it just exploded, but the simmering has been going on for some time. It is very unfortunate, actually very sad, to see political leaders, especially political leaders, propagating decadence, intellectual decadence. Because what we have here are people saying they are not interested in the quality of the institution as long as they put somebody they like in that particular position. The key question that maybe they should be asking is whether the person who was appointed in that acting capacity is fit to be in that position,
right?
Not where he comes from, and whether he'll be able to deliver on his mandate, and maybe the criteria that may have been used in reaching at the decision to appoint a particular person.
But even before you get to that, should politicians be involved in the recruitment of leadership in universities in the first place?
We have a constitution that talks about public participation. So if they claim that they are participating as public, there's nothing wrong with that. What is wrong is for them to insist that they must have their way in such matter. And that should not be allowed at all, because it is a license to self-destruction. In fact, you lose the purpose of a university when that becomes the main consideration as to whether politicians in a particular place are happy with a particular appointee. If they do have serious reservations, they should express them. But there are better ways of expressing reservations than storming into a building and trying to embarrass or kick out somebody who is legitimately in that position.
Professor Naitule, is there a place for politicians in the appointment or recruitment of staff in public universities, especially vice chancellors?
I would say there is zero place for the politicians, even though the law is talking about public participation. That is not what the law would have in mind. The law would think maybe our students would participate. I would have no problem with that. Maybe the lecturers should participate on how we recruit the people who govern them. I have no problem with that. But the politicians, when they start interfering with how university managers are recruited, then they will also hire doctors for us, you know. And to me, that is the path to self-destruction. So, and also you can see the immaturity of the politicians we are discussing here, because when you have a problem with a certain appointment, the place to go is the court of law to challenge that. It's not to storm into an institution. Now, a leader who reduces himself to organizing a mob and a storm into an institution, it shows that he doesn't even know the minimum requirement, the minimum legal requirements which regulate our behavior, you know, just those very basic minimum, because what do you expect from a governor, from a member of parliament is absolute and total fidelity to the law. That's what you would expect. So you would expect this fellow to go to court, challenge the procedure which was used, recruitment, challenge the qualification of whoever it is they don't want for acting capacity, but they were brazen. They just even indicated which particular person they would prefer. So I don't think there's a role for politicians in appointing university managers.
All right. Prof, generally, when universities are advertising for the job of Vice Chancellor, and more universities did do that in March this year, what are some of the qualities and values that they are looking at?
Ideally, it should be somebody who commands respect, somebody who has common sense in terms of concept and application. It should be somebody who has competence in the management of the operations of institution of higher education. It should not be somebody who is totally ignorant of what a university is, but somebody who has vision and examine to find out what would this person deliver, or what would he do to raise the profile of the university to a very significant level, in case the university is down there.
Right.
Because that's something that people look at. And it should be also people who have scholarly ability. Because if you are running a university and you cannot write a paragraph properly, then there's a problem. Because you ask professors to write or lecturers to do something, and you have a problem yourself. So they look at all those things. But most important is common sense, credibility, and respect.
And how fair is that process?
It varies.
In most cases.
There are some places where they have appointed very good vice chancellors. It's not a blanket thing. So in general, on the average, it's 50-50. There are some places where the appointment of particular administrators is questionable. And that may explain why some of our universities are having problems, because the people appointed may be questionable.
All right. Now, Professor Naitule, when this happened in the county of Uasin Gishu, we did look at other universities across the country, especially in the regions, and we found that a good number of them have leaders from the locality, not leaders, vice chancellors coming from those particular regions. Why is there, so that it means that problem goes deeper than just a politician. So why is there a tendency by locals to impose leaders on these universities wherever they are situated?
Yeah, I think this is, do I call it oversight or failure, in my opinion, of taking the role of the university serious in society from the appointing authorities. Because this is how first it started. It started by setting up certain universities to belong to certain ethnic groups. So if you try to check out, you will find some universities for that years or so, they are only being managed by a particular ethnic community. So when it started like that, and then the opening for constituency colleges started coming in, then the local leaders, the local political leaders, started lobbying now for their own people to handle the institutions in their regions. So it continued like that until now what we find ourselves actually having what you can quote and quote call village universities. Now, you say the most is actually all of them. Because if you try to find the ones not ended by the villagers, these are really very few. But you see, this was a lack of understanding of what a university is supposed to do. First, the university, first and foremost, is supposed to create a citizen who is a Kenyan. And to do that, then the university management as a whole need to reflect the image of Kenya. And they need to reflect that to who? To the students who enter that university. The first thing they need to see is Kenya is represented here. So when our students go to a university, and then what they find, they don't find themselves into it, then they are questioning themselves whether they are in a university or in some high school, or glorified high school as it were, within that localized place. So I think something going wrong a little bit in 1990s in some universities by replacing when a vice chancellor finishes his term, then they look for a vice chancellor from the same ethnic group to replace. But now this was the reason for that. Right. It wasn't just what was happening is corruption entered the university system.
Right.
And the corruption creates roots and networks. To protect that networks, you need an agreeable person to replace an outgoing vice chancellor. That's how some universities simply became ethnicized. They belong to ethnic communities. I mean, the more we are trying to talk about here, I've tried to think the last time then there was a vice chancellor who wasn't from that ethnic community, you know. So this is the problem, but I think it's a problem right now that the minister is trying to handle. If you see the problem coming from the politicians, it's because the minister is actually getting a handle in solving that problem, and people resist because the benefits, there are benefits that will disappear if the university was strictly about research and knowledge creation, because that's what they're supposed to do. Right. Then nobody will be complaining who is about to be.
So the benefits that Prof is talking about, those are talking about corruption, maybe cartels in running the institutions, maybe supplying or whatever it may be. Is that still happening today? Because you said that is where the problem began. Is that maybe still happening today in public universities?
Yeah, well, there is corruption in public universities. Let me say, there's corruption almost everywhere.
All right.
And, you know, before 1990s, or before 2000 actually, it was the president who was appointing vice chancellors. The criteria for appointing them, he knew best, with maybe the minister. In fact, most of the people, deputy vice chancellor, and even principals, and by then the universities were just a few. So and that's when the president was the chancellor of all the universities. Yes. With that change, then you have the increase of the number of universities, and the localization now started taking place. Some people saying this is ours. I do know that at Moi University, even back in the 1980s, there was that feeling that this university belongs to the people here, and not, there's that little village town called Wakesas. If you are told, we made clear that you cannot settle here, even if you wanted to. So what has happened now is this thing has sprouted, and with the increasing almost a university almost everywhere, then the local people, the politicians in particular, because what we saw, politicians have lobbied for universities to be established in their places.
Right.
And they have succeeded. So once they succeeded in lobbying for a university to be put in their place, then they feel they have a stake in who becomes the manager. The problem with that is that some of the managers have not been the best people. I do not think there is anything wrong, per se, with somebody who knows the terrain in a particular place, heading the institution. The quality of the person is the issue. And whether this person has the broad vision of the country, or we're trying to turn the university into a village polytechnic with a university name. That has been the problem. So you go into a place, as the prof is saying, and you look at the whole structure, you get lost. Is this a university or a glorified high school? And sometimes you go in other places, you find exclusion people deliberately being excluded from the management of the institution, whereas some others are deliberately included even when they have no clue as to what they are doing. Now, when that happens, the university starts going down the tube because the essence of the university is being ignored. And the essence of the university is to generate knowledge, to distribute, to share, to be innovative, to come up with better things.
All right.
And also, now the distribution, the sharing of that knowledge is through the teaching and research. When that is not being done, and today we should admit, very little research is being done in Kenya.
In universities?
In the universities, yes.
Prof, the issue of devolution, it came with the new constitution, the 2010 constitution. It is still being implemented. Is it making residents, Kenyans, leaders, elected leaders as well, confused about what the role of devolution is in as far as, you know, the universities, which are national assets, are concerned? Maybe thinking that this is ours, this should be devolved as well to some point.
I think it's confusing them, yes, because I think some of them, some of these new managers we elected, they're even thinking that they are running independent states to the exclusion of other Kenyans. You see, there are rules which came with the devolution to strengthen our unity as a people. For example, the employment within a county was not supposed to, the locals, the majority of the people in that county, they were supposed to get 70% of whatever employment opportunities are available there. And that percent was supposed to come from external, from the people without that county. The idea was to maintain the unity of Kenyans. That has been almost completely ignored by nearly all of them, because we have been doing research in those areas, and we have the fact, we have the data. They've been almost thoroughly ignored. Now, there is also another rule here, which also is now being challenged by the likes of the governor of Uasin Gishu. The rule that all national institutions, because these are national assets, supported by the Kenyan taxpayers without discrimination as a whole, they cannot have more than 15% of one ethnic community working in those institutions. Again, that is coming under attack as a result of this devolution. So there's a confusion within the devolution, because also we seem to have gone into it full speed, which I think should not have happened. I believe that when we set out into this route, because it's a good route, it's involved resources, but the managers of counties, the governors, should not have been elected by those counties in the first 5 elections, meaning 25 years, so that we can mature into being Kenyan and running in devolution. This is what I feel should have happened. The governor should have been recruited by the Public Service Commission, appointed by the president, and then confirmed by parliament, so that you don't have, so that they can, you can have, say, for example, if you take the county of Meru, the county of Meru can have one governor coming from the coast or coming from Nyanza. Now, even the corruption that we seem to have devolved would have been less, because the people would check that in governor seriously. Now, they can't check their governors on corruption, because he surrounds himself now with his clan. And when he is surrounded with his clan, he has now a fortress to defend his corruption. So it becomes even difficult to monitor these governors as it's. So devolution is a challenge, and I think we need leadership in changing some of the devolution proposals which are not working, because we can clearly see which ones are not working.
All right. We have talked a lot about the root causes of this problem that we have in public universities. Let's switch our attention to what can be done to avert this or to change the situation that as is currently on the ground. Let's start with like what happened last week. How would you classify that, the utterances by, you know, elected leaders storming a public university 2 days before graduation ceremony and saying that this will not go ahead unless one of our own is the vice chancellor? How isn't that hate speech and incitement?
I think for me, as a commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration, that is outright breach of law. In fact, that is even incitement under Section 95 of the Penal Code. let alone the sections of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. So what we have done is we have sent investigators to Washington Gisho, because if you are going to present a case, you need to investigate it, you need to compile, you need to get all those statements, because the judge is not listening to the TV and so on. So once that report comes to us, we will set it down, we will analyze the evidence. We are convinced as a commission that the law has been broken. We will forward it to the Director of Public Prosecution, who will make a determination whether there is enough evidence to proceed with the case. Because what we feel that that was outright incitement and it was dangerous. It was dangerous because other people couldn't copy that.
Right. Could it be that NCIC and other government agencies that are mandated with checking issues of incitement and hate speech are the problem?
Well, they could only be the problem in one respect, and I believe one respect only. You know, when the country gives you an assignment with a very specific mandate, in our case, is to educate Kenyans, to reconcile Kenyans, and to basically propose the way that we can get united and work as a people. That is the mandate. The other mandate is to deal decisively with those who would divide us, because the law also gives us that power. Now, in the event that we are either unwilling or unable to do that, then we become the problem. Now, in this situation, neither us, the NCIC, National Cohesion and Integration Commission, nor the law enforcement agencies are unwilling or unable. We, like our chairman is saying, we intend to execute this mandate without fear or favor.
All right.
And we will do it because we have been given that trust.
All right.
That trust must be upheld for the people of Kenya.
Prof, such incitement coming from elected leaders, we have seen student election, body elections in public universities, taking that tribal roots. What does such utterances from elected leaders do to students?
They set a very bad example when people who are supposed to be respected engage in unbecoming behavior, and then they wonder why the children are doing the same. It just shows a lack of foresight on these people. One of the things that can be done, if it were possible, anyone who aspires to be elected governor or any major public office, maybe they should go to school on how to behave. They should go to school and be inculcated with national values, a sense of national values, national interest, because it clearly is not in Kenya's interest to have a governor or a politician, an MP, or a senator storming buildings when they are the ones who should know better, because they should say, okay, we may not be happy with this. They know where the minister is.
Right.
They have access to the minister. Could go and ask questions, discuss things. So they need to go to be taken to school before they take office.
Does this affect the quality of graduates that are coming out of public universities?
Yes, it does. Once people see that sort of behavior, the students may even think that studying is not important, because if these are the governors, these are the people leading the country, and they do not show sense of decency in the public arena, some of them may think that that's the way things are. So they may even start questioning whether they should do their homework.
Right.
Whether in fact, I've heard some people saying, you go to a university, and before you enter, you are told very clearly, you are required to do the following before you graduate. And then they start saying, why should we do that? Say, why did you go to that university? This kind of thing comes, and from this kind of behavior, it's reinforced by this thing. The other time we saw high school students burning buildings. Why? Part of it because they saw the leaders doing it, behaving that way. So it is a very disturbing development that people we should respect and people who should have self-respect would engage in such behavior.
All right. Prof, as we wind up, this happened in the county of Uasin Gishu, where Moi University is located, a region that bore the brunt of the 2007-2008 post-election violence. When you see this happening, this becomes a very specific problem. The NCIC has been accused of being a toothless dog in as far as having a very wide mandate. But this is a very specific problem. Is there a way, or will the Commission find a way of punishing counties and universities who would, make those institutions tribal specifically?
Actually, we have proposed as a Commission that even the money that the counties get begin to be tied to the extent to which they are upholding diversity. And that means we will have to deal with the commission that deals with the revenue allocation.
Right.
We are also saying that all the institutions, the national ones, they can be held accountable directly by the executive because they fall directly there to the executive. It's the counties where the law needs an adjustment so that we will be able to hold them accountable. So we are working on a very wide area, and we have really done a lot believing in that area and making sure that the devolution does not become a threat to national unity. But there are certain things that we actually did not think about, because even when we go to the front, which we do, it's very hard to find these governors in the offices. They are all in Nairobi. So even if those Kenyans who walk around saying we need to remove provincial administration, maybe they need to join us in this in our front trips, because we go to the counties. These people are always in Nairobi. The majority of them are never in their counties. And therefore, like Professor was saying here about their training, you wonder where they went through, because one of the things is fidelity also to duty. When you have on duty, you execute it with everything that you have, with all the power that you have been given. It looks like even that, for them, is becoming a very problem. So there is a risk here we are running, but again, this is a 5-year experiment so far.
Right.
And I believe Linda's will emerge that we will try to fix this, not just for national universities, but also for the way we are running the counties.
Right.
Because clearly, it's the way we are running them is a threat to our unity, is a threat to our cohesion.
Thank you. In a nutshell, Prof, what is the solution to this problem?
Attitude change across the board, from the top leadership, from the children, and which means that the education system and philosophy needs to be overhauled, such that we inculcate, we internalize citizens' values, such that people can think seriously for the betterment of the country and not for parochial things.
Right.
So we need a serious attitude change, even in our politics.
Thank you. Professor Kitili Naitule, Commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, and Professor Macharia Munene, a lecturer at the United States International University here in Nairobi. Many thanks for joining us. We have been talking about the issue or the problem of ethnicization of public institutions of higher learning. Many thanks for staying with us here on Checkpoint. We are taking another quick commercial break. Don't go too far. We have still a lot for you on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Checkpoint. A teenage mother in the small village in the county of Bungoma claims she's now being shunned after reports that her 4-month-old baby speaks. 19-year-old Salome Wangila says the baby girl has been heard to speak in Kiswahili language. However, other than the mother and the baby's grandmother, no one else has been reported to hear the baby speak. Take a look.
Following claims that a 4-month baby at the home has been talking, villagers have been flocking to the home of Johnson and Salome Wangila to see the baby girl, whose parents claim has mastered how to communicate in Swahili. 19-year-old Salome tearfully narrates how her daughter Joy was born at Naitiri Medical Facility on 21st April this year has been talking despite her age. What pains her heart is that neighbors have branded her Genie.
Hata kama sister yangu wote sasa ati mtoto anaongea, lakini kwangu ndimeiona, nilishangaa hata nafikanga maana potesha tufahamu kabisa. Maana
wasema wewe mtoto wako ni chini. Ama kama sio chini, mama yake alipigwa chini kwa tumbo.
Allegedly, the mention of the two words later became a habit for the baby, who the family says has been talking sometimes during the day and occasionally in the evening.
Mama nataka ugali, nikampa, akiendelea hivyo tarehe 3 kataza akiongea na jirani atusikuleka hapa viazi, akiendelea tu hivyo nikafikiria atawacha, kumbe ni anaongezeka kuongea. Juzi akauliza baba, atakana ite baba anaita dadi. Anu watu gani? Akamwambia ni wakeni yako. Shula aliuliza hivyo akanyamaza. Saa 9:58 akaniita mama nataka uji. Saa 10 kaambia mama aibu. Saa 2:14 anahitaji maharagwe.
Mara 2 ya kuongeza mara moja na mama nataka uji.
Manea na Maemba wa Musolo, the 77-year-old grandmother of the baby, says she had to take off when the baby started conversing with her mother.
Kufika jioni saa 12, mimi natia ugali, nilikuwa napikia hapo nje. Haya. Na kama ugali nataka kuchemuka, na mimi naenda ndani ya nyumba nachukua unga na mwiko, natia chini. Nasikia mtoto anasema ati mama mimi nataka chai, na sauti ya kubwa tena nasikia tu. Mimi natoka hapa mbio kuenda kwa mtoto, ile huyu ndiye anamfuata. Nasema hii mwanamke hapo mambo kani hii.
But the incident, according to her mother, has not only brought joy to the family but pain in her heart because of how some people view her baby.
Rai ni nyuma tu. Kasema badala nikufe niache mtoto basi abaki. Sababu kuliko kusema nimeleta majini kwa poma. Na ukisema jina mimi roho inaniuma. Sababu ndio najua usito wa mtoto mpaka vile amefika hivi.
Mimi kama jirani nasema yani tumeshindwa, huyu mtoto hatujui ni muujiza ya Mungu ama ni mambo ya dunia, hatuwezi jua.
Whether or not baby Joy actually speaks is yet to be independently established. What is not in doubt is that the teenage mother is asking for assistance to raise the child. Elvis Kosgei, KTN News, Kewa Village, Naitiri area in Bungoma County.
Edition of Checkpoint on this 25th day of September 2016. On our discussion, we did focus on the tribal nature of public universities in Kenya, the back of what happened in Moi University this past week. A lot of texts and tweets coming through on our discussion. Let me sample just a few of them. Cecilia Jepchumba with a very harsh verdict. She says tribalism flows in the blood of Kenyans. It is in our public universities where we bake graduates in tribalism and corruption. Wamboi says with ethnic-based political parties dividing the country, we cannot afford to do the same with academic institutions. No. Ken Dolo tweets, commercialization and liberalization of education dragged university management to its deathbed. And one here from Sadat on Twitter, who says local leaders imposing VCs in university situated in their areas so as to use the institution for mobilization during elections. Ricky Kimani also on Twitter says perpetrating tribalism is idiotic regardless who the perpetrator may be. William Ian tweets, now it's wide open that politicians still divide Kenyans in terms of their tribes. And NK, the truth on Twitter, says VCs should represent our tribal diversity, but the same VCs shouldn't oversee universities in their home areas. Godfrey Nderitu says, no, we will be breeding tribalism in our country. One is entitled to work anywhere in the country. Gabriel Karaoke finally says, appointments should be on merit. This tribal debate is retrogressive. Many thanks for texts and tweets on our discussion here on Checkpoint tonight. That's where we leave it. I'm Ben Kitili. Good night from the Nairobi.